Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leisrealtalk. Lei has a new internet connection, so hopefully this will work better. Let's see. All right, after 2 intense days of negotiations, China and the US have reached a temporary agreement or a trade truce. It's the most significant breakthrough since the trade war began back in 2018. It created a so-called win-win moment that brought short-term relief to global markets. But beneath the surface, deep structural differences underscoring long-term frictions in US-China relations. Um, as soon as the joint statement was released, China's state media kicked off a full-blown propaganda campaign declaring victory. Some online nationalists even linked the outcome to China's military strength, claiming a strong military naturally settles trade disputes. Other patriotic Chinese pointed to China's diplomatic confidence. After all, China sent only a vice premier to talks in Switzerland rather than dispatching a top leader to Washington. Former Global Times editor Hu Xijing was quick to weigh in, calling it a triumph of courage over hegemonic pressure. He said China had once again won big. Surprisingly, some American media echoed Beijing's narrative. MSNBC claimed the US just blinked. Really? CNN said Trump's biggest win wasn't the deal, but his distortion of reality. And Washington Post ran, China celebrates hardline stance after trade deal with the US. So today let's cut through the noise and take a closer look. What's actually in this agreement? And who blinked and who really came out on top? And what hidden concessions did China make? In my opinion, they made 4 major concessions. And despite all the narratives, how does Beijing truly feel about this deal? So first things first, what's in the agreement? I'm going to give you a very brief summary. Based on the joint statement, here's what the US-China agreed. First, the United States will maintain a 50% total tariff on Chinese goods. This includes 20% from Section 301 tariffs, which came from Trump's original trade war #1, 20% fentanyl-related punitive tariffs imposed in February and March, 10% reciprocal tariffs from the April 2nd global tariff hike. Now, China, in return, will impose only a 10% tariff on US goods and will drop all other retaliatory measures, including the rare earth export ban. So it's a US 50% and China 10%. Many media outlets used 30% versus 10%. They failed to mention that the 20% in existing tariffs remained untouched. So let's break it down and compare the US-China tariff trajectory chronologically. Section 301 tariffs began in 2018, covering nearly all Chinese exports to the US, with a weighted average of about 10% at the time. Under Biden, these tariffs weren't rolled back. In fact, some were expanded. By the time Trump returned to office in 2025, the average US tariff on Chinese goods ranged from 5 to 25% and settling at about 20% on average. Meanwhile, China's baseline tariff on US goods was about 7%. This is according to a financial analyst based in Hong Kong. So here are the numbers. So why 7% or why only 7%? Well, according to the analyst, this is China's nominal tariff rate. It looks low on paper, but Beijing uses non-tariff barriers like VAT, consumption taxes, and strict certification rules to block imports. These measures have long frustrated American exporters. Then Trump came back to power in January 2025 and pressured on Beijing, and the pressure on Beijing escalated quickly. So in February and March, Citing CCP's lack of action on fentanyl smuggling, the United States imposed 2 rounds of 10% punitive tariffs, adding another 20% tariff across all Chinese exports. In response, China announced countermeasures targeting U.S. agriculture, energy, and machinery. But in practice, none were enforced. Why? Well, because China operates under a strict import licensing system. Only state-owned enterprises or SOEs are allowed to import such goods. And these SOEs avoid the tariffs by simply submitting a statement called Supply Chain Irreplaceability. And this document cites Article 57 of China's customs law, and they get exemptions. And China's customs never challenged them, never challenged the SOEs. So the only ones got hurt are the few small private companies importing low volume niche products that they can't get anywhere else. So by March 2025, China's real tariff rate on US goods was about 15%, a moderate or a modest 8% increase. Meanwhile, US tariffs on China had climbed from 20% to 40%. So here's this is this comparison. That's March. That's before April 2nd. Then came April 2nd, the Liberation Day for Trump's trade strategy. On that day, the United States launched a full-scale tariff war, imposing reciprocal tariffs globally. Only China retaliated. Other regions like the EU and Canada talked tough, but didn't act. And during this phase, US tariffs on China escalated to 165%, combining the new 125% reciprocal tariffs plus the existing 40% baseline. And China too raised its tariffs, at least on paper, to 125% as retaliation. Then came May 2025, the dramatic climbdown in Switzerland. At the Geneva talks, China essentially folded. Its delegation dropped tariffs on US goods from 125% to just 10% and canceled all other countermeasures, including rare earth bans. And this means all 2025 retaliatory measures are gone. And also, China has fully accepted US punitive tariffs. Let's put it this way. Only a fool in Washington would say no to this offer. So why China can really retaliate? Well, it's because China's imports of US goods, especially in agriculture, energy, and critical machinery, are non-substitutable, if there's a word. Is there a word called non-substitutable? Yes? Okay. All right. Tariffs on these would only hurt China's economies. So that's why Beijing's hands are tied. So that's what I say. The Geneva framework states that US tariffs on China is 50% and China's tariffs on US is only 10%. So that brings the US tariffs level back to Trump's original April 2nd proposal, right? At the time, China rejected those terms, but now they quietly accepted them. Both sides, the other point is both sides have agreed to continue negotiation over a 90-day period, but this 90-day period started retroactively on April 2nd. That means the deadline is July 1st, and it's only 47 days away. The two countries have only 6 weeks left to conclude negotiations. If no agreement is reached, the US will impose another 24%, pushing the overall tariff to 78%. And there's more. The US has kept the punitive tariffs on strategic sectors, including automobiles, semiconductors, steel and aluminum, and pharmaceuticals. And these tariffs range from 50 to 100%. But since China exports little in these sectors, comparatively speaking. They only nudge the average tariff up by 4 to 5% on a weighted scale. So that puts the real average US tariff on China at about 54%. My proof? Well, Trump just signed an executive order yesterday setting, is it today or yesterday? Time flies, I lost track, maybe today. He adjusted the tariffs on small Chinese parcels. He lowered the tariff on the small parcels from 120% to 54%, and okay, so it was 120% or $200, whichever is higher. Now he lowered it to 54% or $100. So I think this 54% that he used is really the real average US tariff on Chinese goods. If you put everything in, if you weight everything together. So, but if you look at the bottom line is US tariffs on China, 54%. That's up from 40% in March. That's a 14 points uptick. And China's tariffs on US is 10%. That's down 5 points. So let me just show you this slide. So this is a chronological order of China's tariffs, or the US-China tariffs. So it's pretty clear who won and who lost, right? So to summarize, Beijing made 4 major concessions. First, China effectively accepted all pre-April 2nd US tariffs. 20% from Section 301 from Trade War 1.0, 20% for fentanyl, plus a new 10% base tariff, totaling 50%. In contrast, China is only imposing 10% on US goods. That's a 40-point gap. And this was China's first major concession. Second, China agreed to suspend all non-tariff countermeasures, including, since April 22nd, including the rare earth bans, soybean restrictions, and investigations into US firms like DuPont. However, the United States made no reciprocal move. For example, the ban on NVIDIA's H20 chip remains firmly in place. Third, China reportedly agreed to specific US demands related to fentanyl, which has caused America's opioid crisis. Meanwhile, the 20% US fentanyl tariffs still hold, along with 25% sectional tariffs on steel, aluminum, autos, and EVs. Fourth, while not formally detailed, reports have suggested that China quietly pledged to increase imports of American agricultural and energy products. So that's obviously a move aimed at narrowing the trade gap and placating Washington. So this agreement is a temporary reprieve for Xi Jinping. It gave Xi Jinping and the CCP a desperately needed break, a moment to catch their breath before the ship sinks. To put it bluntly, the mood inside the CCP leadership right now can be described as it's like being granted a royal pardon. And it is not just people like me who took notice. I'm not making this up. The Chinese public have also noticed the mood change. And how do we know that? Well, sometimes you just need to watch what they want you to watch. A recent curious programming change on CCTV's movie channel became public interest in China. Monday morning, Hubei's, there's an official government news outlet called Changjiang Cloud News. It's a state media outlet. It posted a screenshot of CCTV movie schedule on Weibo. The post announced that it says this, quote, following substantial progress in US-China economic and trade talks, CCTV would air 2 parts of a movie called New York, I Love You on Monday night at 10:24 p.m. and then 11 p.m. The Post, and then after that, the Post tagged CCTV channel schedules New York I Love You quickly went viral and shot to the top of Weibo's trending list. And Chinese public smelled something. Well, here I have a poster of the movie New York I Love You. This was a 2008 American romantic comedy. It was a sequel to a 2006 French film called Paris Je t'aime, or Paris I Love You. But this movie change was a red flag because it felt oh so familiar. Back in 2018 and 2019, when the US-China trade war 1.0 was heating up, CCTV responded with a stream of anti-American Korean War movies like Battle on Shangganling, right? And also there's a movie called 英雄儿女, or Heroic Sons and Daughters. These are very patriotic CCP propaganda movies. But right after a call took place between Xi Jinping and Trump, the same movie channel pivoted dramatically and aired the movie called Grief Over the Yellow River. It's a love story between a Chinese revolutionary soldier and American Flying Tigers pilot. I don't know how that can be possible, but apparently there's a movie made about it. This time in Trade War 2.0, the declaration of love to America was even more overt and embarrassing because Chinese netizens took notice and brainwashed Chinese nationalists find it hard to take. And soon the CCTV replaced the movie, not once, but twice. First, they replaced New York I Love You with a 1936 old movie. So here's New York I Love You. They replaced it with this movie, Camille, right? It's an old movie. There's an opera. Verdi wrote an opera called La Traviata based on the same story. And in Chinese, we say 茶花女. It's a famous tragic love story. Okay, then realizing they made another mistake, the CCTV movie channel replaced Camille with a feel-good Italian comedy called Welcome to the South. I spent time trying to find these movie posters for you. So why these movies matter? Well, don't assume these changes were random. They reflect Beijing's internal mood better than any press release. New York, I Love You, and the movie The Grief Over the Yellow River share the same message. China knows it cannot survive without the Americans and does not want to be separate from America. Both movies are about finding true love and needing each other. And Camille, the La Traviata, was likely pulled after internal pushback. Why? Well, because it's a tragic love story, right? For a regime that compares US-China relations to a couple and itself to the female lead, that's a bad omen. The female lead in La Traviata or in Camille died tragically. So in the end, CCTV settled on the movie called Welcome to the South. It's a lighthearted, feel-good 2010 Italian comedy, which is about cultural misunderstandings. It's a sign that Beijing needed to lighten the mood and save face. So, who really blinked and who won? If you're still wondering who won the trade talks, just look at the trail of these Chinese movies. They spoke volume about Beijing's true mindset. All right, let's talk about what's ahead. Let me get rid of these movie posters. I have not seen any. I have not seen any of these movies. I watched the opera. I saw the opera. La Traviata because it's such a famous opera, and I grew up in a family that's my family my family members are fans of classical music. My mother is a big fan of Italian opera. Anyways, so yeah, so the opera is what I have seen. Anyway, so what's ahead? So despite the temporary truce, there are two major issues remaining, in my opinion, that are fundamentally unresolvable in the next 47 days. First is fentanyl. Fentanyl isn't just a drug. It isn't a drug issue, it's a weapon. It's been widely reported that Xi Jinping's fentanyl policy was a strategic operation to weaken America from within. It was his quote unquote new opium war against the United States. And the project was even given a code name. It's called Project Zero. As long as Xi Jinping remains in power, no meaningful agreement on fentanyl is ever going to be possible between the two countries. The only scenario for the resolution, a post Xi Jinping leadership transition or a post CCP scenario. And the second issue is free market access. President Trump has made it crystal clear. He wants China to open its market. He said so on his Air Force One. He mentioned it again, I think, in the last day or so. But here's the reality. Any sector that still remains closed in China now, after 30 years of opening up, is never going to open, at least not under CCP's rule. And this includes media, the media sector, financial services, telecommunications, digital services or platforms, education, and maybe even more, but these are the major sectors that came to my mind. These industries will remain off limits to foreign competition so long as the CCP controls China. If Beijing opens them for foreign competition, they will lose control of the country, right? And that's the end of the regime, or that equates to the end of the regime, or that equates to ending the regime. So as long as the CCP and Xi Jinping remain in power, there is no chance for the United States to reach any agreement on fentanyl and free market access. Anything the CCP promises on those two issues, in my opinion, is deception. That means there won't be a truly comprehensive US-China trade agreement in the next 47 days before July 1. So the current 54% tariff rate will likely rise to 74%. No, 78%. Yeah, well, actually, I should say the current 50%, because the 54% is weighted. So I should say the current 50% tariff will likely rise to 74% on July 1st, unless there's a leadership change and a regime change within the next 47 days. Although that's not entirely impossible, the chances are not great. But the damage is real. Think about it this way. The original 20% tariff from Section 301 in 2018 had already forced many Chinese exporters to relocate to Southeast Asia and Latin America. And the analyst in Hong Kong said that half of China's remaining exports to the US became disguised transshipments through third countries. Now, with average tariff at 54%, most exporters are unable to stay afloat unless the Chinese government steps in to help them. But unless it's a strategically important industry, that's highly unlikely. And if the tariffs rise to 74% in July, I think to a lot of people, it won't even matter because many businesses will go out of business before they even get to that point. Beijing might have bought itself 47 days, but time is running out. unless we see immediate political reforms or leadership regime changes, it will be, I think this trade truce will be remembered as the day that Beijing blinked, and it will be the beginning of a long, painful unraveling. So that's all I have for you. I hope it's helpful. Okay, all right, that's all. I hope you enjoyed the movie parts. There has to be some entertainment value in talking about the CCP. Otherwise, it's utterly gruesome to talk about this every week. All right, let's see what people have for me. Okay, oh, here's one. Miles David. Do you, oops, disappeared on me. Where did Miles go? Oh, here it is. Do you think China will actually become more powerful militarily and economically over the US? If so, is there anything the US can do to stop it? I do not think China will become more powerful militarily or economically under the CCP. Not under the CCP, never. However, China will continue to pose as the biggest threat to the United States, not because it's powerful militarily or economically, but because the CCP is willing to play very dirty with the United States. That's what's scary and threatening. And it's willing to play dirty. It's willing to cause pain and suffering to its people. It's willing to sacrifice the well-being and happiness. There isn't even happiness at this point. There's just well-being or the safety of its people, and that's why it's scary. No other governments would do this, but they are totally capable of doing this. So see, the CCP is threatening not because it's powerful, it's strong. It's not strong at all, but it's bad. It can do terrible things that other people are not capable of doing. So that's the idea. Okay, all right. But good question. Very good question. Okay. I'm just picking some random questions if I see some. No questions. No questions for me. Oh, here's a question forwarded by Chris. The audio isn't clear. What happened? The audio isn't clear. Oh. Terrible. Wrong microphone selected. Is this better? Thank you, Chris. All right. I'm sorry that the microphone was the wrong one. All right. I feel awful for these technical mishaps. What about Trump airplane from Qatar? Is that a bribe? I have not followed that. I'm not quite sure if I can answer that question because that doesn't involve China. Next swing. Thank you, Lei. It's going to take time to unfold the current relationship. I think President Trump knows China's moves and will take measures to control them. Well, thank you. Let's hope so. Let's hope he's not being fooled by China's promise to open its market, because it will not. It will not. Okay. All right. Okay, so the audio is now good. John S. Lei, what else can we expect between China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan? What else can we expect between these four countries? I think the similarity, I mean, what I'm really concerned about
I think the first thing we need to answer, the first question we need to answer is what's upcoming in the South Korean election, right? I mean, that's the first, depending on who wins the presidency. I think that's the first question I have. And then for Taiwan, Taiwan has a similar challenge. The parliament, the Taiwan Legislative Yuan, is controlled by the opposition, and there's a mass recall movement going on, calling to remove the pro-Beijing legislators. So if that movement is successful, then I think President Lai is in a better position to issue policies that will better protect Taiwan. Because if that movement fails, then Taiwan's situation could become very similar to that of South Korea. These are really the top issues that concern me right now when it comes to South Korea and Taiwan. As far as I don't see there's any commonality that could tie these four countries together, other than that Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan should be on one side, and China is on the other side. I don't see any commonality that connects all four countries. That's my answer. Okay, all right. Brendan G. The PRC constantly violates all agreements. Shouldn't the PRC be suspended from WTO, all these conventions and favored nations until genuinely complied with agreements? Absolutely. Why it's not? I mean, any agreements that other organizations or governments reach with the PRC is, I mean, has the PRC kept its promise on any agreement, has honored any agreements it signed with these organizations? In your question, I don't think so. I mean, it partially complied with the agreements they signed, but they never fully comply with the agreements it signed. So, question, do you think Trump is blindly optimistic about China's capabilities to play dirty? I don't think he's blindly optimistic about China's, I think he's fully aware of China's capabilities to play dirty. I think that on that note, he is aware, but I think he could be a little too optimistic about his ability to force the CCP into some kind of agreement. I think on that note, he's a little bit too optimistic, but all leaders, all strong leaders have that tendency. So it's not just unique to him. I think he's a little too optimistic about forcing China to open up. The only way China will open up is after the CCP disintegrates. All right. Chinese children are being taught to hate Americans. Do you think that the parents and children will grow and hate Americans? If they have the chance to, it's very hard. Yeah. I was going to say that if they have a chance to visit the US and really know what the United States is all about, then they may not. But then I changed my mind, because take a look at our colleges. I mean, there's so many Chinese students here, but they still follow the directives of the CCP. And this is because their parents are probably high-ranking government officials. And it's in their best interest to work against the United States because of who their parents are. So, but then the average Chinese at this point probably won't be given a chance to come to the U.S. To be given a chance to learn what America is all about. So it's only the privileged ones that can come, and then they are not going to change because it's in their best interest to continue the official narratives, because that's the guarantee of their privilege. And these students grew up with privilege, and they don't want to lose that. So what's the point of sending them here? It's not to our advantage. So I don't know. I think it's a very sad reality. A lot of Chinese children and parents will continue to hate America without knowing that they were being deceived. All right. Chickpeas. Lei is the best channel for truth. I'm so happy to hear that. Well, thank you. Will Lei be my adopted sister? James, California. Okay. Am I up for adoption? All right. I'm glad that people want to adopt me. Okay. So I know that I always have a home. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Brandon G. Well, thank you, Brandon. Okay. All right. That seems to be all. No, seek the truth. Do you think the recent whoosh by the CIA fishing expedition to get CCP officials to cooperate yield any results? Oh, I made a program on that. I think the reason they made the videos was because it had yielded results. Because last year they released the video, it was an instructional video, just to tell the Chinese how to contact them. There was no narratives, but it was working. So they followed up with 2 more videos. So yeah, I think it's working. I think it will work. Someone asked me, Galia, why Xi Jinping was not accompanied by his wife in Moscow. That's a good question, because his wife has missed 2 of his recent diplomatic missions, right? He was in Southeast Asia and then Moscow. His wife missed the trips. And there were 2 explanations. One explanation was that his wife was not allowed to go with him. She was kind of held back as a hostage in Beijing. That was one explanation. And the other explanation was that his wife is probably also under investigation because she holds the title. She was a commission member. She was a member of this commission in the military that vets all the promotion of all officers. So she oversees, I shouldn't say oversees, she's part of a function that reviews the promotions of all military officers. And because of the recent purging of the large number of purgings that has been going on in the PLA, she could be in trouble. Well, people could hold her accountable. If you're part of this group that reviews all promotions, then how come you didn't know that all these people have loyalty issues? So that's another explanation. She is being held responsible and possibly is being investigated. I do not know the answer. But typically Xi Jinping likes to take, Xi Jinping is known for always taking his wife on the trip, because he knows he's not as charismatic as his wife, because his wife is a singer and is popular in China, and the woman is likable. So that is a question that many people ask. Kiran Patel, well, thank you. Is Chinese economy is only at 8 trillion? It's only at 8 trillion? What? GDP? What is the 8 trillion? Okay, all right. I think that's all. Here's a question forwarded by Chris from Jim K. Do you think China will resort to military action attempts after July 1? It depends on how bad China's economy will become. It also depends on how much power Xi Jinping has left. It depends on who has full control of the regime at that time. So it's hard to tell at this point. Okay, I will end it here. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.